Over the next 7 days, I'm going to be building my largest LEGO Star Wars MOC to date. It is going to be 3 times larger than my previous big MOC. It's going to be a massive LEGO clone base. I cooked up this micro-scale concept model of what I thought the base should look like. I built a little path, maybe a landing zone at the end, and then at the very other end of the MOC, I want to have a big garage door for the Republic fighter tank and BARC speeders. And around the back, the entire base will be hollow and viewable from the exterior. I laid out my base plates, and I'm going to make this all modular so I can take it apart and put it back together in different sections. But I built up a brown edge to represent dirt, and then I started laying out filler bricks, and I would later plate this off with some green plates. I made all the filler bricks evenly spaced, so when I plated it off, it would be nice and sturdy. Then I got to work on the second base plate. For the path, I started laying down the dark tan plates. This isn't final, this is just to give me an idea of where I'm building, and then I went along the edge with green wedge plates and regular plates just to make it look like the path was indented. And then I went back and started adding 2x2 dark tan tiles. I would later remove these for a different design, but I just started experimenting with what I thought looked good. I went back and I started ripping up all the tiles. I changed it so that all the tiles were in circular sections, sort of like some parts of the road were lower than others. And I used a variety of studs in the middle, as well as some dark tan wedge plates to make it look sort of like splashes of mud on the road. I finished up day 1, feeling pretty good about my progress and ready to move on to day 2. Off camera, I built a small section of what I wanted the foliage to look like, as well as a preliminary tree, and so I brought the 2 sections from yesterday together and connected them, and I was ready for the next step. The pieces I'm using to connect these base plates are Technic bricks with pinholes in them. I put these bricks in the foundation of each base plate. I wanted to make a landing zone for speeders, and then I tiled it all off, and I wanted to elevate the landing zone for speeders. So I took out my slopes and my light bluish gray masonry bricks and used one of my favorite techniques to elevate the entire platform, using slopes and 1x4 masonry bricks. On the bottom corners of the terrain, I'm using dark green to add a little bit of variation, as if this MOC expands deeper into a larger forest or jungle. And I used some leaf pieces and then went back through and stuck on a bunch of flower stems and grass pieces. I'm also using some bright green plant pieces to make it look like more of a jungle. And here's how the finished foliage looks. I really like how it looks super dense, almost like there's a jungle or a big forest surrounding this base. I added a few finishing floral studs to the terrain so the leaves would stay in place. I detailed the path a little bit with some studs, and then I went back and I built up a second tree to make the edge of the MOC have a little more height variation. Then I tested out how the BARC speeder looked and tiled off the entire platform. I added a few finishing touches, and with that, the terrain of the entire base was done. I was feeling pretty good of where I was at, but I'm going to have to kick it into overdrive to get the main base done in time. I started off day 3 by prepping the final base section. This is where the main base is going to sit, and I plated it off with light gray plates to give me a nice sturdy foundation to build on. I started messing around with the hangar doors for the Republic fighter tank, and then I added some slopes of what I thought I wanted my main base to look like. Then I built up a very satisfying wall using light gray bricks. And here's where we're at the end of day 3. I think we're doing pretty good, but today's progress was less than I hoped I could have gotten done in a single day. I had big plans for what I wanted to get done today, so I started off strong by laying down a lot of light gray bricks, and then I began work on the command center. I want the command center to have windows, and it's going to be right above where the parking bay for the Republic fighter tank is going to be. So I used some trans clear panels and then to make the windows. And then I worked on the entrance for where the bark speeders are going to go to their hangar bay. The panel design I'm using for the bark speeder wall, I've used a lot on almost every clone base on the channel. It always works pretty well and it allows me to add a lot more detail. I lay down some slopes at the right angle and then I adjust the plates and lay down bricks on top to lock it all in place. We're only 2 days out from when the challenge is going to end, and I only have a shell of a base. So today, I'm going to fix that. I started by building up a roof using Technic pieces. I use Technic because the way they interlock, they're some of the strongest bricks LEGO makes, so they're perfect for holding up a large roof structure. I began work on the studs on the top floor. I tried ripping up some of the plates to build it in the floor, but this didn't work because of the way I had laid out the base plate. So I'm going to build the studs on the top floor and just rest it on top of the entire base structure. After another hour of off-camera building, here's where we're at. I have this line of bricks and masonry bricks, slopes, on here, and then I also plated off the top section and I finished the Technic assembly, and if you can see around the sides I added some pieces and some tiles to give it a smooth look. This continues around to the back side. So that's where we're at. Let's get back to some building. I went back up to work on the roof. I started by plating the entire thing off using some dark gray plates I had on hand. I had to tear up some of the plates to fix a small mistake I'd made when building the Technic frame. This took away some of the building time I had today, which was really not what I was hoping for. With the roof done, I'm going to go back down and start building up the floor. I'm taking my dark gray bricks and starting to build a studs on top floor, and I'm going to take 1 by yellow brick to build the markings for where the Republic fighter tank is going to sit. I used tiles on the front so it would smoothly and evenly fit in, and it worked like a charm. Then I took some slopes to make sure that the entrance for the tank was not too rough. I off-camera built up the studs on top section of the floor that was where the bark speeders was going to go. You did the same thing using yellow lines, and I used some spring-loaded shooters to make the transition from light gray to dark gray more smooth. I also used some girder pieces to add detail to the wall, and then I connected the 2 flooring sections together. I added tiles around the perimeter to make sure the floor was all smooth. And then I went to the bark speeder entrance and started tiling it off. I went back up to finish the roof, and I used some large slope pieces. I didn't really know what I was going to build here, so I just started throwing down parts to see what would stick, which was not really a good idea this late into the build. It was the final day and I did not have a completed base, so I started it off by making tiling off the roof and making a little railing around the side. I was starting to run really low on pieces, so I was just digging through bins to see what I had and what would work. I used some cylinder pieces to make what kind of looked to me like a coaxium refinery, heavily inspired by LEGO Men 360's mock. I'll link that in the description. I tiled off the rest of the floor, as well as built up a wall to cover the ugly backsides of the 2 units. On the left of the base, I added something that I thought looked kind of like HVAC units, just as a reference to some real-life things in a sci-fi build. I tiled off the top of the command center, and then I brought in the other sections. I also used some transparent clear pieces to mount an ARC 170 flying over top of the base, which I think looks really dope. And then the base was done. And this is the base I've been working on for the last 7 days. In the front, you have the battlefield section. In the back, you have the much taller and larger overall base. Starting in the base, you can see I have the parking garage for BARC speeders, as well as for the Republic fighter tank. The entire floor is built using studs on top of bricks, which means it's very easy for the builds to slide along it. And then in the front, the hangar door is open, revealing the battlefield outside where the Separatist AAT is coming. Then up top, we have a command center. It's a little unfinished. I ran out of time to finish this up, but you have Commander Cody and Obi-Wan Kenobi up there. Over here, you have the weapons rack that I built, as well as some crates in the corner. And I used these yellow girder pieces as some extra detail. Moving out to the front, you have the tunnel where the speeders can go in and out, the ramp, then this outside speeder docking bay with a BARC speeder and some clone trooper. Over here we have the 212. I covered up the ugly helmet holes with some macro binoculars. Over here you have a heavy taking aim at the Separatist clankers. Back here, you have the start. Dark green was gonna be the primary color, but I realized I didn't have enough. So this is sort of like the start. I'm imagining that behind this, it's gonna get thicker and thicker. But the foliage over here was cut back by the clone troopers to make room for the base. Over on the droid side, you have the 2015 AAT with some modifications and a few droids. I don't have too many in my collection, but they're fighting the clones, which are coming out. And then the fighter tank, and this front here, this is actually just an entire panel that just slides on and off, but it's held in place by friction, and I would like that because I'm able to add studs on the front to add a little texture to this blank and boring wall. Up on top, you have this section right here. I don't really know what's in here. I just came up with it just today when I was running out of time. Then I completely tiled off this front area with 2x2 tiles, and I built these little like railings, and I have a clone, 501st clone sniper taking aim at the tank. Now over here you have the shock trooper with some electrical units, and then these big tube pieces. I'm imagining these are used for fuel or something else for the base. Around the back, you can see the ARC 170 Starfighter. I was using this, and I used some clear pieces to elevate it above the rest of the base. We also have some trees down here, and I used dark tan for the path. and I built the grass around it one stud up from it. And I didn't have enough tiles to tile off the whole thing, but I added these patches of tiles, and I also added studs for where it got trampled or broken down. This was the clone base I built in 7 days.